I threw away the intros a while ago because I thought they were pretty corny. We're here with Brian Friend. What's up, dude?
Enjoying the weather.
Yeah.
It feels like a busy weekend, but it's also kind of like a go with the flow kind of weekend.
Yeah. What do you think about WADA being here compared to Miami?
I like it as a concept. There used to be a lot more high-profile events on the west coast of North America, and in the last couple of years they've been sort of sparse. I mean, there are events that happen out here, competitions that happen out here, but not at this scale.
Yeah.
If they continue to do this for a couple of years, I think that just given the way that the competition landscape has evolved in this sport, that this can end up being very comparable in terms of scale and size to Wodapalooza Miami.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong. This is more focused on like teams rather than individual.
They have both.
They do?
Yeah, there are outside of the Tier Cup, which is kind of the showcase event, there are individual and team divisions. So the individuals have Masters, RX. I think they're calling them like Open Division,
Okay.
Teenagers. And then on the team side of things, they're similar. There's a Masters, there's an RX division. I don't think there's a teen team division, but there's an intermediate and probably an open. I think there's around 20 total divisions and 1,000 athletes total that have going to be participating on one of the 3 stages of competition here this weekend. And in year one, there weren't no qualifiers. It was just open sign up, but obviously that's a pretty good number to hit in an inaugural season.
Yeah. Dude, so how would you describe what you are doing here? What are you doing here?
I'm actually here with Reps Ahead.
Okay.
So I've been doing the broadcast for Reps Ahead Pro 2 and 3. This is technically the 4th pro event. It's the biggest stage it'll be on. And so I'll be on the call with Sean Woodland for this one.
Sweet. And so what exactly are you doing?
The color commentary.
Okay. Sweet. So a lot of my audience, I don't think, is like really CrossFit centric. So
Gotcha.
yeah. So you keep stats, right?
I kind of broke into this space through the analytics and stat compilations, comparisons that I was doing. Savan Matosian gave me an opportunity in 2018 to display some of the work that I'd been doing as a hobby for the last several years.
Yeah.
That transitioned into some other opportunities to help competitions. I traveled around a bit on my own expense doing that for a while. I ended up getting hired by Morning Chalk Up, and I did a lot of kind of deep dive analytic pieces there. And I think that, for the people who've been around since 2018 to 2020, that's kind of what they knew me for back then. In the process of doing that, there are other people that have reached out to me who are, quite frankly, better at that than I am. They may not be better at articulating what the data says in the spreadsheets and on paper, but they can pull data and analyze it in more efficient ways than I could. I'm very old school in that regard, counting on fingers compared to writing formulas in Google Sheets type of thing. And those guys are Mike Halpin and Barkley Dale, and if you're, integrated in,
cool dude.
Yeah, and if you're integrated in the space, you'll have at least heard those names, if not seen some of their work. And so I've leaned on their expertise in that regard to give me the same quality of data to evaluate, but also more time to do something new and different, and not just for me, really for this sport in general. I don't think there's ever been someone who's traveled as frequently and as widespread as I have in the last 18 months. I think I've done 40 competitions in the last 18 months around the world.
Crazy.
Something like 18 different countries.
That's wild, dude.
And at every one of those competitions, the goal is to give an audience, however big or small and wherever they are in the world, an opportunity to watch competitive fitness at every one of those stops that I go to. Now, in some of those cases, there's a full-scale broadcast, and it's a semifinal, Wodapalooza, Rogue, Dubai, that's been around for a while. And in that case, I'll integrate with the broadcast in whatever role they ask me to, whether it's actually on the call doing play-by-play or color commentary, in a research role, in a producer role. I've done a lot of different roles on the back end as well. And in a lot of cases, we're trying to offer low-budget broadcast opportunities to competitions who want to get their competition and their product out to people who can't make it on site, but don't have tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on a broadcast.
Sure.
So we've tried to find the a reasonable rate to do that, and it ends up being pretty much just me doing a variety of different jobs at once and offering a POV live stream from the field of play.
That's sweet. So how do you even break into this in the first place? Obviously, you probably got exposed to CrossFit. What got you interested in doing this kind of work?
When I look back on it, I think it wasn't, sometimes you talk to people and they say, I knew when I was this year old that I wanted to be this thing.
Yeah.
And it took me 10 years and now I'm here. What I'm doing now is not ever something that I put on paper. It's not like I was Ben Smith in the garage gym writing, I want to be the CrossFit Games champion. And then 6 years later, he made that happen. It's just been taking it as it comes. And my life has been like that in general. I have friends that in 8th grade said, I want to be a doctor. And at 33 years old, they were in the ER room doing that.
Yeah.
They spent all this time and had a plan. My life's unfolded organically, as I think many people's have. And I've tried to just remain open, and I'm not just open-minded, but open in terms of awareness and spirituality to just letting things come as it will. Paying attention to the signs, taking opportunities, and also understanding that in order to get some of the big opportunities, you have to kind of, put in the miles, so to speak. So it's been a lot of paying for things on my own, people trusting me without necessarily knowing what they were getting when I showed up at this. And I'm talking a lot of during the sanctional years, 2018 through 20, building relationships, and then, hopefully doing a good job and getting more opportunities on the back end of that.
What did you do before you got into this? Were you a 9-to-5-er?
Kind of. Before what I'm doing now, I was coaching full-time at an affiliate.
Okay.
But before that, I was teaching high school world history and coaching soccer teams and the kickers on football teams in Texas.
Nice.
So my major was in history and theology.
Sweet.
I didn't even have a teaching degree, but I was able to get one through whatever the channels they have in Texas for that.
Yeah.
And I actually really enjoyed the opportunity with the kids. I didn't enjoy so much the demands from the administration side of things with public education in the States right now. And sometimes the parents were difficult to deal with. But the ability to have the impact on kids' lives, and honestly, it's comparable to coaching in a gym. You just end up in these roles where, whether people even realize it or not, they're just sharing things with you that they need to get off their chest.
Yeah.
And they view you as a person who they can confidently share that with and trust that this is someone who has my best interest in mind.
Yeah, that's such a rewarding feeling, right? I work with a lot of teenage kids because I'm also a coach. That's my other business that I do. And yeah, dude, the text messages that you'll get from parents or whatever, and even kids coming up to you and just being like, you helped me through this time. It's something special for sure.
I think, this just this life in general, there's a lot of people on the earth, and you get a certain amount of opportunities to interact with them. And a mentor of mine told me when I was young that you can learn something from everyone, even if it's what not to do. But to me, that's parlayed into a different lesson, which is not don't take any relationships for granted.
Yeah.
You and I just met today, and we may never talk again. I don't know. But I would hope that both of us can walk away from this conversation having imparted some kind of wisdom or inspiration to each other. And it's difficult to do it, but if you're able to maintain this mindset when you're having a conversation with someone who's your oldest friend or the newest person you've met, I feel like we're here for each other, we're on earth for each other. And if if you're given an opportunity to be in a position where many people, old or young, are coming to you for something, that's not I don't take a role like that lightly. And so trying to be really mindful of those little opportunities is something that I try to do on a daily basis.
I like that mindset, dude. Where do you get that sort of philosophy? Are you Christian? Do you have any sort of religious background?
I grew up in what I would call an atheist or agnostic home. There was no mention of religion of any kind or spirituality of any kind. When I was 17, 18 years old, I kind of had everything had kind of gone perfectly, and so to speak, in life up to that point. And then I had some time on my hands. I started doing some drugs and drinking. I ended up ruining everything, going to rehab, and being introduced to a different way of thinking that propelled me towards wanting to learn about spiritual principles, different world religions. Like I mentioned, I ended up majoring in theology as a result of that. And after about 5 or 6 years of what I would call like gathering information, I spent maybe 5 or 6 months reflecting on everything I'd learned and trying to, come up with, I guess some, maybe call them tenets or principles or just meaningful values to live by. And, that like, for a while I kind of stopped. Like I was like content with that and I stopped. But a few years ago I realized that it's an ever evolving thing.
Yeah.
And so it's just a state of mindfulness, awareness, being present. And I fall short all the time on that for sure.
Everyone does, dude. Yeah.
But at least trying to, being aware of when I fall short of it and then trying to be, in that state as often as possible is kind of, I would say like kind of the foundation of a lot of it.
Yeah. Do you have any practices that you do on a daily basis? Like, do you do meditation, prayer, or anything like that?
So a different mentor of mine in college told me that any serious thought is prayer. And
okay. Explain.
Meditation is simply being present where you are.
Yeah.
So, I know, and I have personally, I know a lot of people and religions and groups of people who set aside specific time for intentional meditation or prayer. And that's great. But life is full and life is busy and there's things going on. And I like the idea of thinking more along the lines of, sure, I can say some prayers before a meal or before I go to bed at night. Or I like actually this state of meditation and prayer in showers. I find showers to be very revitalizing and a state where I can kind of get away from everything else in life and just be kind of focused on whatever is most important to me that day or in those moments. But I also like the idea of being conscious of your thought, which is what I think that's what how I interpret what my mentor told me. The best thing about him was that he never gave me a definitive thing. Do this. He would give me a thought like that, which gives me the freedom to interpret it the way I want.
Sure.
It's a powerful thing to say. Any serious thought is prayer.
Yeah.
But if we said that to 10 people right now and then gave them a week to contemplate that, what they would all come back to us with is a different interpretation and experience meditating on that thought.
Sure.
So I really valued my relationship with him because of that.
Who is this mentor? Because you've mentioned him a couple of times. Who is this guy? How'd you meet him?
He was, I went to college, had some problems, got clean, and went back to school in Texas. And he was my finance professor.
Okay.
And honestly, the first day in class, I couldn't even understand him. He spoke with a really heavy Mississippi drawl. He actually
can't understand that for shit. No way.
But I was in AA, going to meetings regularly at the time. He had like 30 something years clean at that time. And so I ended up switching out of the business school altogether and he retired. But we were going to meetings together and bonding over, sobriety. And we just started meeting on Sundays at a coffee shop that he liked in Austin, Texas. And we kept doing that for 3 years without, it was not planned, as I've been kind of referring to. We just had 3 pretty much consecutive years of meeting on Sundays. And the focus of the meetings was the Sermon on the Mount. But conversations would evolve in any direction. You never kind of knew where they were going to go. The Sermon on the Mount is Matthew 5, 6, and 7 in the New Testament. And those,
I just read through that, actually.
Yeah, and those, as with many things in the Bible and with a lot of spiritual texts in general, there's a lot of layers there. So you can read it at a very baseline understanding and take the words at face value. As with many ancient texts, they were written in a different language, so trying to understand what the original meaning of those words were compared to the way that they read in modern English, and then going from there into a little bit more of like the potential spiritual meanings, the allegories, and that's where we would oftentimes find then full circle back to real things that are happening in our lives.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty, when I look back on it, I realized that was more or less a 3-year-long Bible study, and we only made it through 3 chapters of one book of the New Testament.
Yeah, it's crazy, dude. Like you said, there's layers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I often find myself, I'll meditate like on a passage from the Bible for a long time and not really be ready to move on, but I move on just for the sake of like actually reading it, so yeah. That's crazy, dude. So one thing that you said was, what did you say? Any serious thought is prayer, right? That's what he taught you? That's interesting because you always, they say that the mind is a powerful thing. So the things that you tell yourself, like, will come to fruition. So if you think you're a loser, if you think that you're a winner or whatever, that will eventually become true because you think it, so you're probably willing to do the actions that are required of that, right? Or you fall into the actions. Have you seen that play out true, like, in your life?
Yeah, yes, but it also, like, time, I'm struggling because time is such a strange thing.
Yeah.
One of the kind of lessons that I learned through Alcoholics Anonymous is that you can want things to happen and you can work really hard for them to happen, but they still may not always happen the way that you anticipate or in the time frame that you anticipate them happening. And so whatever you're I think that it's a healthy practice for humans to have something to believe in that's bigger than themselves. And if if you can find some comfort in knowing and trusting that, whatever it ends up being for you, then I think it can help when you get frustrated. Because I get frustrated all the time that, like, I've been doing this now, traveling around and working across the competitions since 2018. In different, with different levels of intensity. I wasn't doing 30-something competitions a year for all of those years.
Yeah.
But, when I think about all of the stuff that I've done and what has it amounted to, I feel good about how far I've come, but I also feel like, shouldn't I be further along? And, whoever's listening to this can probably fill in something from their life, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, whether it's a hobby, a passion, or just, whatever. And that's an easy trap to fall into because what the fallout of that can end up being is those kind of negative self-talks.
Yep.
And instead, what I try to focus on, I was talking with James Sprague about this morning, the champion at the games this year, and you ask about, like, daily practices. And so something that I try to do at the end of every day is check in with myself.
Yep.
Like, am I proud of the way that I comported myself today? And if not, then is there, what could I have done better? And when I do that regularly, a lot of times patterns emerge. And so, I'll realize, man, I've just become, like, bad at meeting people for the first time. I'm not really, like I talked about earlier, giving those relationships that much credit. And it's easy because I meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
But if you're in a position where you're meeting a lot of people, that's, you can look at it half full or half empty. That's a lot of opportunities, or you can look at it as being very draining and tiring, and I don't want to meet any more people. But you never know if that next person is going to be the person that might be the person you needed to meet that's going to maybe get you to the next place you want to go.
100%. Yeah, you never know who you're talking to.
If you find yourself thinking, shoot, maybe I should be, and I've missed some opportunities, but that doesn't mean that more opportunities won't come.
Yeah.
We, like, by nature are going to make those mistakes, and we are going to miss some opportunities.
Absolutely.
But there's always something that's coming next, and I think it's equally important to give yourself grace as to be critical of yourself. If you can't do the second one, then the first one can actually be kind of troublesome.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have trouble with the latter, right? Like, being honest with themselves about the things that they do wrong. Do you find that to be true?
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably, for me, at 18 years old, when I was first going through rehab and the 12 steps of AA, and they asked you to do, like, a searching and fearless moral inventory. Like, that's pretty intimidating. And, I think almost every person alive would balk at that at first and say, like, whoa. Like, there's some shit that I've done that I'm really not that proud of. And I don't know if I want to relive that. And I don't know if I want to admit that to another person.
Yep.
There is something powerful about doing that. And obviously, you have to have a safe environment to do some of it in. There's people that have done illegal things, things that are like things that they would never want to speak about. But if you find the right environment to do it, it's actually incredibly freeing.
Yeah.
And it can really open up an opportunity to move on from things that subconsciously you might not even know are holding yourself back.
Yeah, 100%.
And the trajectory of the 12 steps is basically, once you account for all of the things in the past, good, bad, or otherwise, that and then you have the opportunity to do it on a continuous basis. And if you kind of are keeping up with that practice, that you never need to go back to that time of having just a mountain of things that are potentially regrets or, self-hate type of stuff. And that, if you're in a practice of regularly kind of owning and admitting when you maybe aren't acting the way that you wish you would, I also think that it precipitates doing that less.
Yeah, that's cool, dude. That's a really good perspective. You mentioned earlier that you have some tenets that you like took throughout the years, right? That you try to live by. What are a couple of those? You don't have to give us all, but what are?
Well, they're very simple in nature, but I feel like I at one point I did write pages of articulating each of these, and I'm a little bit sad that I don't know where that writing is. But there were 3 primary ones that I had identified back then that were things that I noticed as being prevalent in all world religions throughout history and spiritual practices that have become more modern, perhaps. One of them is do the next right thing. And it's, like I said, it sounds super simple, but
it's hard.
Yeah, it's really hard. And it also is intentional. Like, all the words are intentional to say, like, you may not have just done the right thing, but you can still do the next right thing.
Yeah.
And so it's this mindset of still giving yourself hope, still giving yourself grace, even when we fall short. And then, obviously, the presentness, mindfulness, being in the moment also increases the chances of doing that well. And the second one is progress, not perfection, which is, directly out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. But to me, it's critical. It's, no matter how big or small the things are that you're looking at in your life, like, being okay with understanding that you're not perfect, like we are by nature not perfect, is, to me, a fundamental part of being the best version of yourself. The third one is one that I forgot, and as I alluded to earlier, and it's out of the Sermon on the Mount. Basically, it's just to keep searching. It's not to be complacent with your spirituality, with your relationships, with your work, with whatever it is that are like the kind of main focuses of your life. You hear it said all the time that life is short, but while you're living it, there's so much that happens. And it's so easy to fall into these patterns that kind of, you hear people talk about these ruts that they're in life. And that's like, it's so easy for that to happen. And you see people, even that you think have the best jobs, the nicest houses, the best relationships, the coolest life, but they, from your perspective, it might be one thing. But if you actually get to know them, a lot of those people, it's just the same thing over and over. Yeah. And they haven't pursued learning the next thing about their wife, learning the next skill that could advance their business, picking up something new. It's just like, I've always played basketball and I always play basketball. But it's like, man, you've been playing basketball for 20 years. Don't necessarily stop playing basketball, but like,
try something.
Yeah, what else could you do? Maybe learn to skateboard, and then you're going to learn something different about your body, So you can spread these things across any part of your life. But those were the 3 primary ones that I identified as being pretty consistent in all spiritual and religious practices.
Yeah, so that strikes home with me when you say that people, like, life is short, right? I have this thing, though, that I think, people don't chase after their goals or dreams at the end of the day, because I believe that everybody knows that we're going to die, but they're not really, like, aware that you're going to die. So life seems like it's going to be longer, and you keep pushing things off till tomorrow because you always think that you have tomorrow, not realizing that tomorrow could be your last tomorrow.
When I was in rehab, I met a ton of other people in rehab of varying ages and experience. I mean, there's people that I knew there who'd been in 10, 12, 15 times, which is, that cycle makes me sad that it exists for people. But a lot of them said to me a repeating message of be grateful that you're getting exposed to this stuff when you're young. I was 18. I turned, I think, 19 years old when I was in rehab. And one of the things that I was sort of forced to face at that time was the concept of death. And I for whatever reason that year, I really explored, okay, how do I like come to terms with the fact that, I will die, and most of the people that I love will die. Like, and I don't know if that's like, well, they're all gonna die, but I don't know if how much of that I'll have to deal with or when. Right. And I mean, as much time as I've spent trying to prepare for that, I still know that when if my dad dies before me, that's gonna be hard for me. Like, no matter what. And this year, it was the first time when Lazar died at the CrossFit Games. That was the first time since I lost 2 close friends, one when I was 11, one when I was 21. and now Lazar, who's a good friend of mine, on my 37th birthday.
Sorry to hear that, dude.
And it was the first time in 16 years that someone close to me had died that I wasn't expecting. My grandparents passed away a few years ago on my dad's side, but that was like 10 years in the making, and I was able to have meaningful times with them, and we were all expecting that, and we're able to prepare for it more. But the unexpected death in life is really jarring for people. And look, like, I mean, they did a tribute for him here, and it's been, 5-6 weeks since he passed, and I was crying last night, and I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with accepting emotions as they come and allowing myself to feel through those things. And at the same time, being conscious of the fact that life doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And it's totally fine for you to pause.
Yeah.
And to take the time that you need, whether it's a day or a week, or, for example, in the Orthodox Church, they spend 40 days in mourning.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture allows for that from a working perspective and support of the community perspective. But, I want to have, I want to be in a place in my life where I can do both.
Yeah.
I can appropriately mourn, grieve, and feel when that happens. And I can also keep living in a way that I think is productive and meaningful.
Yeah, so Heather and I actually just had talk about that on a podcast like a couple weeks ago, where I think we were actually talking about Lazar. The reason why that stuff, and you hit it right, you hit the nail on the head, right? The reason why death is so hard for a lot of people is because a lot of times they're not really thinking that it's a reality, right? So like even with Lazar, it just happened and you weren't prepared for it. You couldn't think about it, right? And but you find like when your grandmother passes away, or even like somebody that's sick that you're preparing for it. You have time to kind of like, marinate on it, think about it, and like come to terms with it. It's a lot easier to deal with, dude. I didn't know that you and Lazar were friends, so I'm really sorry to hear that, bro. It's a big bummer. I know what it's like.
Yeah, and I know it's maybe not the focus of the podcast, but that morning I knew what had happened 90 minutes before they pulled his body from the water. But I didn't want to accept it.
Yeah.
And I had a chance to go to Serbia and spend time with his family and his brother a couple weeks ago, and you're being there and you're in it,
Yeah.
and you still don't want to accept it, and they don't want to accept it or believe it. But death it's one part of life that can catch you off guard, but many other things in life can catch you off guard also. And that concept is that as you're going through your day, things can and will happen that will surprise you, will shock you, that will cause you to feel something that you weren't planning on feeling that day.
Good or bad.
Being so like I think of it as maybe it's a cliche saying, like failing to prepare is preparing to fail. So like if you haven't spent time getting yourself comfortable with yourself, then the way you handle those moments is somewhat unpredictable.
Yeah.
But if you're confident in, this is a good example actually, because another thing that happened at the CrossFit Games this year is that James Sprague very unexpectedly won the games.
That's pretty sick.
And he's 22 or 23 years old.
Yeah.
And he is a very young man. He has a very, very high level of confidence in his faith.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives him the ability to handle hard situations in a way that a lot of people who are a lot older than him can't.
Yep.
And there's people that have been very critical of the way that he comported himself during the rest of the weekend. And he knows that. But he's okay with it because he can do that thing that I talked about, which is go home at night, sit down with, whether it's looking yourself in the mirror or sitting down with God, however you understand that to be. And he knows between him and his relationship with God that he's doing what he thinks is the right and best things to do.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's always risky to say something like this because you don't want to be critical or judgmental of people without giving a chance to talk to them and empathize with where they're coming from. But this is my own experience when I have met people who are more self-confident, more confident in their beliefs, their moral structures of values, however they line that out, than I am. I can be jealous.
Yeah.
And when I'm jealous, I can be envious, and then I can be mean.
Yep.
And so as I've understood that and accepted that about myself, I've tried to just be better about being comfortable with me, being comfortable with what I believe, being okay with reevaluating those belief systems, those values, and then hopefully being in a position, like I didn't know I was going to do this podcast with you today.
Yeah.
And this is something that I've been doing ever since I used to live in the Dominican Republic and work with a nonprofit organization that was volunteer-based.
Cool.
And I developed a practice back then of just asking for guidance in terms of public speaking. And I've had a lot of public speaking roles over the years, and it wasn't one of the things I planned on doing necessarily. But so when I was walking over here, before we started this, I just did this conscious, I would call it a prayer, but it's just a serious thought. And I said, hey, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, to whomever. I'm just communicating this to my spiritual, belief system. But just allow me to be open-minded to the conversation and to speak clearly about the things that I've learned in my life up to this point.
Yeah.
And so this just is a mantra that I kind of have anytime that I have to. We went on this podcast stage earlier today, and I felt unprepared.
Yeah.
In terms of having something written out, we didn't have any guests, but I also felt immensely prepared because I could lean into that mantra and the fact that I've done so much public speaking in different aspects of my life. So.
Well, dude, it looks like your prayer worked, man, because it's been a good conversation so far. I've been digging it. I wanna ask you a little bit more. I think that a lot of people are interested in the type of work that you do, and how you develop these relationships in order to have competitions or maybe brands fly you out, because every kid now wants to be an influencer and all this stuff. But I look at what you do as a little bit different than influencing. I think that what you're doing is kind of like you, Lauren Khalil, I don't know really who else does it besides you two, to be honest, but Peter, he does it too, kinda. He does a little bit different thing. How did you get into actually doing this, like going to competitions? I know that you mentioned earlier that you did a lot of free stuff. What gave you the idea to do it in the first place?
Oh man. Look, I've had more jobs at these competitions than I can count.
Yeah. And
more recently, I've just tried to take the whole breadth of experience that I have and identify the things that I think that I'm best at. And because of just the way that my brain is wired and the experience that I have, I would put myself up against any person on earth in terms of watching a fitness event or competition and having a good understanding of everything that happened on the field of play. And because of that, I feel very comfortable and confident going to new environments where I may not know a lot of the athletes, I may not know the competition organizers, I may not know the history of that competition, event, festival, whatever, but that I can draw on the experience that I have and the skill set that I just have naturally to remember that information and tell a story about a community. It's a point of contention that's existed in the ecosystem of CrossFit for a while, and specifically CrossFit. How does the sport relate to the methodology?
Yeah.
The methodology of CrossFit, I firmly believe, will create healthier, more productive members of society.
Why do you believe that?
I'm not going to say that I've agreed with everything that Greg Glassman has said over the years.
Okay.
But in my experience, training at, coaching at, and being a part of communities of affiliates and like-minded individuals over the last, I guess this is 11 or 12 years now, I've seen it's a story that he used to tell about a guy who came to train with him, and he told him to write down 5 things on a note card that he wanted to improve over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
And this did not have to be things in the gym.
This is Greg Glassman?
This is Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit.
Got it.
And he said, I'm confident that if you come and train with me 4 or 5 hours a week and follow the dietary guidelines that I give you about 80% well, that a year from now, no matter what the 5 things you write down on the paper are, that you'll be moving in the right direction towards those goals. And they could be your blood pressure or your back squat, but it could also be your bank account or your marriage, and anything in between. And I've watched this play out in real life, where people who come to CrossFit through whatever means and progress forward, obviously in the gym, but also outside of the gym. And they have a new level of confidence, a different kind of energy, a different perspective.
Can you back up just for the camera? Sorry.
And
We got that one too right there. Yeah, thanks, dude. Keep going.
I've just seen it happen too many times to not believe it, and it's been true for me too.
Do you think that, okay, so a kind of like debate and thing that I'm trying to sparse out. I'm new to CrossFit. We'll get back to your story too in a second. Something that I'm trying to like sparse out here. I'm newer to CrossFit, probably like 3-4 years. I didn't start in the affiliate arena, so I'm not familiar that much with CrossFit proper and all that stuff, right? So there's an argument online of like, is CrossFit the methodology for like fitness and blah, 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 right? You've probably seen Marissa and Taylor Self and all these people talk about it. Now you're saying this, which I find interesting, and like, I think that I agree with you. I'm trying to get to the core of like, why, right? There's like a series that I'm trying to do is why CrossFit. Do you think that this is CrossFit exclusive, or do you think it's any community-based fitness?
So I want to pull in the competition aspect here, because I think it's not only critically important, but it's also easy for people to understand. When you put a date on a calendar to do something that's important or challenging, so this could be a wedding, it could be running a marathon, it could be a CrossFit competition, it could be spring break that you want to look good in your bikini.
Yeah.
When you put something on the calendar and then you have a goal, by the time I get to whatever, I want to fit in my tuxedo. I want to be able to do well in the events that are out there. I want to be able to run sub 4 hours on the marathon. In order to be able to do those things, you have to make daily choices that are going to give yourself the best chance to achieve your goal. It's a well-known thing outside of the world of fitness or CrossFit that if you do things regularly on a daily basis over a period of time, they become habits.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a CrossFit competition, if you want to do the best of the CrossFit competition, you're going to make specific decisions in your day-to-day life regarding nutrition, sleep, hydration, and training. At the very least, those 4 things that if you do them regularly for a month or two, have a good chance of becoming a part of your lifestyle without you even realizing it after the competition as well. And those habits are what the methodology produces.
Right.
But without having that competition date on there, there's a different level. You can be more complacent in those pursuits. So you've been in CrossFit for 3 years. If in the first year, for whatever reason, you met some people and they're like, bro, come and do this competition with us, then you have something immediately in your introduction to CrossFit that's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that sounds cool. But man, if I'm going to do that, like, maybe I shouldn't drink every night this week. Maybe I should reserve that for Saturdays. Maybe I should try to get 6 hours of sleep instead of 4.5 that I'm usually getting. You know, these are real life problems that people have that suddenly they might say, is that going to really, like, I'm going to go do this team of 3 competition with my buddies. I don't want to be the weak link on that team.
Yeah.
I better get in the gym and get my back squat number up, or I better learn how to snatch a barbell, whatever. But those disciplines become like almost thoughtless patterns, you know.
Yeah.
I'm on the road right now 2/3 of the year, and my fitness feels like it's taking a hit because I used to train like 12 to 15 hours a week, and now I train like 5.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've gone backwards, but I haven't actually. What I've realized is that I want to train. I want to work out, and I feel better, and I do better at my job when I do that. So now I don't even have to like force myself to do it. I just find opportunities where I can. And training or working out or exercising has become a part of my life that is a habit rather than something I have to pursue or force myself to do on a daily basis.
Right. So, okay. I'm with you totally on all this. I come from bodybuilding, powerlifting, and strongman before CrossFit. So a lot of these daily habit things, it's interesting to me because I feel like a lot of people who are in CrossFit, their first exposure to exercise and like even competition intensity, stuff like that, is CrossFit. So when you say CrossFit as the methodology, all these habits are built into the methodology. This is why I think Greg Glassman is one of the smartest people on earth, because he trademarked a methodology, right, that encompasses everything. So anything that you say just counts as CrossFit. Do you get what I'm saying? So what my like point of contention is that why is it not bodybuilding so long as you take the same habits? Then are we going to call it CrossFit too? You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these principles have been like, you can look to the days of old, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and even before him, Lou Ferrigno, like all these people, and they were doing like all the same stuff, dude. Like, you talk about time domains and things of that nature. They were really big on time under tension and things. And then the daily habits, like don't drink except for the weekend, eat, they were very big on like fruit, veggies, and lean proteins back in the day too with bodybuilding. So do you think that, again, like, I think the thing that CrossFit does that's exclusive to CrossFit, it's a methodology, but it's also a community of people. There's no like community of bodybuilding, because if you ask somebody, what do you do for exercise? They'll be like, I'm a bodybuilder. You'll be like, so you compete? And then they're like, well, no. So you just work out. You just do like 3 sets of 8 or 4 sets of 6. You know what I mean? But when you do CrossFit, everybody knows what you're talking about, and you don't necessarily have to be a competitor to do CrossFit. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, when we say the methodology, like another or more maybe common understanding of that is it's a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at the base of that lifestyle is nutrition. Mm-hmm. And being born and raised in the United States, 80s, 90s, 2000s, like we are now integrated into a country that has a base of unhealthy nutrition.
Yeah.
Like our country is actually founded, currently it's like built upon intentionally poor quality of food.
I agree. Yeah.
And the more that you travel internationally, the more that you will absolutely believe what I'm saying right now, because the things just taste better in other parts of the world. And there's a lot of, I believe there's a lot of corruption involved in that. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's actually one of, it is one of the biggest things that motivates Greg Glassman to this day to continue to combat and fight against that. And it's really, if you actually are paying attention to what he has preached over the years, that's the thing that he's trying to defeat.
Yeah.
And he's found a way to borrow a lot of old school methods, techniques, practices, disciplines, whatever you want to call them, but he has a great way with words, and he was able to put them into a language that was new, even if the ideas weren't necessarily new. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you just kind of get lucky, or you have the right timing, or you have just the confluence of things that come together. And I think that in the early 2000s through maybe 2015, 2002 to 15, everything was just like the timing was right for that to really have a big impact on the fitness community that already existed, as well as expanding the global fitness community.
Yeah.
So I think it's just, who knows? There may have been 10 people with the same ideas around the world at the same time as Glassman, and he just happened to be the one that everything lined up perfectly to get that message, get the wording right, and get it out via the channels that actually gave it the chance to kind of grow and spread and spread. And I think if you're in the fitness world now and you're not grateful for that, then you're probably holding some kind of personal grudge that has nothing to do with what he's actually provided us as a human race.
I mean, his mission is amazing, and the way that he articulates himself too, it's very good. I think that he's done a really good job with the marketing and everything like that. It's been great to see. Let's get back to so give me the story of how you get into doing this and then you make it a career.
Well, it was like a transition from coaching full-time and traveling to competitions part-time, and then flipping that on its head. And I was only able to do that because of a lot of opportunities that people had given me and a lot of relationships that I'd built. Whether it's as a coach or as a personality in this space, I think that one of my better skill sets is relationship building, is just getting to know people, listening to them, trying to understand where they're coming from. And you can't fake that. It's like people, they know. And so I was talking with Bella Martin this morning, because I think that it's something that she's great at also, and she's got some new stuff coming up, and I was just kind of affirming something that she probably knows, but sometimes it's hard to admit it about yourself, is, I feel like we're people, and I feel this way through experience and watching it, that you can just drop into a community of people and we can integrate it there without knowing anyone, better than maybe most people could. And so I'm grateful for that gift, and especially within the constructs of the fitness world, I feel really comfortable entering into. Last March I went to Saudi Arabia. I'd never been there before, and I knew nobody there.
That's cool.
Well, I knew a couple of the athletes, but in terms of the team I was going to work with, I didn't know anybody. I had one virtual meeting with them and a couple emails exchanged.
What's that like? Is it kind of nerve-wracking?
Not as much as you might think. Not as much as I had thought at first either. But this is now like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know if I would have had the same confidence to do that. But at this point, I feel very comfortable. I'm trying to get a visa currently to go to Shanghai.
Yeah.
And I know that when I go there, I'll know the guy who's hosting me there, but I won't know hardly anybody there, and I won't speak the language at all.
Yeah.
But I still feel comfortable going there, and it's not just because I think that I'm good at the job that I'm going there to do, but it's also because of those other things that we talked about, of feeling comfortable in my own skin, of feeling, confident that if I'm confronted with difficult situations or unexpected things, good or bad, that I have firm footing to stand on.
Yeah.
And I mean, quite frankly, it's also just a lack of fear of bad things that could happen. There's been a lot of times in my life that I've traveled for CrossFit or other things, and people who are living in a fear-based reality will say, "Whoa, wait, you're going to the World Cup in Brazil? Do you know how dangerous Brazil is?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, 1 million people are going to the World Cup in Brazil that don't live in Brazil.
Right.
Yeah, is it possible that a handful of them will be killed for whatever reason? Sure. Could I just as easily not wake up tomorrow night when I fall asleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to not take this opportunity if it's something that I want to do because of a small risk. There's always risk in life.
Yeah.
So I feel good. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not afraid to die.
Yeah.
Because of the way that I live.
That's cool, dude. That's cool. So based off of these relationships that you've built, do you call upon these events, or do they call upon you?
Both. Yeah, it goes both ways. More recently, yeah, we've had a lot of people reach out to us and see what it would look like to have us be involved in telling the story of their community or their competition. But I also have certainly reached out over time. I mean, at some point I might have to try to find someone else who can do it also, because we are having some weekends where you have 2 different opportunities in 2 different parts of the world. And I mean, as much as I love traveling the world and meeting different people, I don't think I want to go to 18 countries and 36 competitions every year.
Yeah, it's got to be a lot, dude.
Yeah, it is nice once in a while to just have 2 or 3 weeks at home.
Yeah.
You can get back into some routines that are hard to do on the road. You can spend some time with people that are important to me. And yeah, I mean, I think life's full of seasons and it's full of ebbs and flows, but I think that a little bit more balance in that regard wouldn't be a bad thing for me in the next couple years.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, hey man, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me. Hopefully we can do it again sometime in the future since you're moving so close.
Yeah, that was pretty wild to find that out this morning, and it's just a kind of a testament to some of the things I've been talking about. Is since I've decided to move back to the Midwest and I'm moving to Wisconsin instead of Illinois, I've just kind of organically met a few people who happen to live in that part, and it's not like a lot. It's not like I'm moving to New York City where there's 8 million people. But I don't think that those are meeting people like you is a mistake.
Yeah.
That's part of just being in the flow of life.
Yep.
And taking it as it comes and trusting your instincts. And when you do that, a lot of times things pop up that they can be surprising, but after a period of time, you just kind of come to accept them.
Yeah, it's God's plan, dude. It's God's plan. All right, bro. Well, hey, I appreciate you. Thanks so much. And subscribe, do all that. We'll catch y'all on the next one.
That was really good, dude.